Welcome to the Golden Nuggets of Real Estate Investing, a podcast dedicated to helping you achieve financial freedom through real estate. We'll be discussing the most important lessons, or better known as the Golden Nuggets of Real Estate Investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance with new and experienced investors to help you get into real estate investing or scale up your portfolio. So make sure to tune in. What's going on, everyone? It's Ross Nedaee, host of the Golden Nuggets podcast. Welcome to episode 5, part 2. Part 2 is full of golden nuggets as you learn about creative financing and leveraging other people's money to create a win-win situation, passive income and active income strategies, leveraging your home line of credit to fund deals or use it as a means of generating more wealth, and last but not least, another hot topic, hiring the right property manager for your investments. We discuss where and how to find good property managers, analyze the hidden fees that you should be aware of, and as a bonus golden nugget, write off expenses using gift cards. Shh, don't tell the CRA you heard that here. With that being said, please help me reach as many eyes and ears as possible by sharing this podcast across all over social media, including Instagram and Facebook stories. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, leave me a comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on the most recent episodes. It'll help the YouTube algorithm and help people find these videos. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it will greatly help me create more free content and have more amazing guests like Andrew Cox on the show for you. Thank you so much for your support. Please enjoy episode 5, part 2 with Andrew Cox.
Yeah. But essentially, I didn't know enough back then. And I made some bit of mistakes when it came to the ability to refinance. So I had a lot of equity tied, as I told you, like over 100,000 in each property. Right. So what I ended up doing was I bought a couple properties with this new partner who happens to be somebody that I know quite well and trust. So then what I said to him is, well, if you want to keep going, why don't you partner in on me with my existing properties? So basically what I did is I gave him equity in my existing properties for an exchange for his qualification. We got a new mortgage to double the amount. And I got all of my equity out. So he gets equity moving forward, and all the pre-existing equity was mine. So that was a big payday for me. And it also allowed me to go ahead and be more aggressive in 2020 to acquire like those other properties with him. Like I put in some of the renovation budget, he put in the down payment, and then it's like, it's a true 50-50. Right. So I have money in the deal equally as much as he does. So when we BRRRR it out, if we, however much we can get back, we split it in half. And so all the expenses are split in half and everything. So that's that relationship. So right now I have 4 in partnership, 50-50. And with this particular partner, we're going to keep going in 2021 and get some more. And he's also agreed to help me fund some of the flips.
That's awesome. That's really good. So clearly he likes what the partnership's going, and he sees the value in you, and he's willing to invest and grow the portfolio more, which is really, really good to hear, right?
Well, at the beginning of 2020, he's like, yeah, I'd like to buy some houses. And I bought him 4 houses in less than a year. Plus he actually partnered with me on the 5th one that we've got the accepted offer on. So he had 5 houses inside of a year, and his life didn't change. He still goes to work and comes home to his kids, and it's a pretty valuable relationship for the person that's providing the financing.
Yeah. So again, he's being passive, and that's what he wanted, and you kind of taking over, the more the active side. And what I love about you is like you're active, but you're not also active. You found the fine line where you kind of get in, right? You do the renovations, you get it to par, you find the tenants, and then after that, you just wanted to take it off the gas pedal and relax, which is really, really important.
That's interesting, yeah, because like for me, it's a fair bit of work for 3 months,
right?
And then it's never anything. It just goes away. you know.
3 months of hard work, and then it pays off.
Yeah, and just keep repeating that. And you know, the thing about the investor, just going back, that I wanted to say is, my only real question is, how much money do you have? I can spend it. I can get you as many houses as you can possibly afford, and fast.
Right.
Like we did 5 deals inside of a year together.
Right.
So just to any, you know, partners out there, it's like, just tell me the number and I'll hit it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of effort, I was going to say, the realization comes back to what do you want, right? And I say, like, I don't want to kill myself for this. This is not the intention. I mean, there is the concept of, you know, work. What is it? Do what others aren't willing to do now, so that you can live like others can't live later, or whatever. And, you know, hustle for 10 years so that you can retire for the next 40 or whatever.
Right.
But at the same note, when you look at it, you can acquire, like I did 5 properties in a year, and I don't feel stressed about, 6 properties in 1 year deals.
Yeah.
And it didn't tire me out. Like, I didn't work that hard at it. So when you're hustling, it's like, think about what you really want, and how much do you really need. Mm-hmm. So if you're just for retirement, you know, you can, 4 properties bought at $200,000 in a market that's appreciating like wildfire.
Yeah.
You know, in 20 years, those properties are going to be worth $750,000.
Yeah.
So it's like, I realized very quickly that if all I'm doing is looking for my retirement, well, it's done. I'm finished.
Right.
I don't need any more, you know?
Yeah.
So I just sell those houses in 20 years when I'm 60. I mean, I want to retire sooner, so that's what keeps me going. So now the goal is shifted from, forget 65, you know, it's 55. And you know, I'm looking at it now thinking, like, could I even do 50, you know, for fully retired? And that's quite a lofty goal. And that would make you have to work really hard. But
yeah,
I consider what I'm doing, I consider myself semi-retired. Like, I don't have a job, which is great. Like, before I got on here with you, I think I fell asleep on the couch. Like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you got the freedom.
And as far as, like, I like what I do, so
yeah.
So I don't mind doing this forever. I might dial it back, but my goal, I'm really following, for any of those that follow Matt Pichet, like, I'm following his principles. Get a bunch of houses in the first 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I might have to do it a bit sooner because or a bit faster because I'm coming at it a bit later than he did. But get a bunch of houses, convert that into money to then lend out. And so, you know, in sort of maybe like within 10 years, I want to be private lending and just do whatever I want to do. You know, that's the most passive form of real estate investing possible.
Yes,
and that's where I want to end up. So that's
to your point exactly, right? Like, you what you want to do is very important. Like you said, there's some that just want to work for their retirement, and there's some that want to retire from their job. See the difference, right? One is, they love their job, they love their career, they're doctors, lawyers, whatever. Maybe they love what they're doing, which is awesome, amazing, right? And then there are folks that are like, they're working in a corporate job or whatever sort of job may be, and they're not quite happy with it because they're like, you know what, I need to spend time with family, I want to travel. So then they're putting on that extra work to get that. So then based on that, I love that you brought that up. That's when you got to tweak your goals and your strategy, right? So buying and hold is fantastic, but it is a long-term goal, right? You got to sit on it for a while to get the appreciation, to do the refi, to pull up your investment. And so you need to figure out, if you want to get out of the whole 9 to 5, you need to also have passive income. So active income and passive income needs to be combined in order for you to sustain the business model. Because otherwise, if you, let's just say, like, on an average property, let's just hypothetically say is about $500 cash flow, and your income is $2,000 a month, you need at least 4 of those per month, right, coming in for you to get something so you can replace your income, right? Others have different goals. They want 20,000 a month or 30,000 a month. So you got to figure that out. So reverse engineer the whole thing. Sit down. How much is my income? What do I want? How realistic is this for me to get? How can I do it? Was it going to be through passive, through cash flow, or is it going to be through active, like flips, renovations if they're, a handy person, or wholesaling, whatever it may be. So I'm kind of in the midst of that as well. I'm getting to a point where I'm like, okay, yes, I'm doing passive, which is fantastic. But in order for me to scale up is either you got a JV with other folks, or what I'm working on more is the active. So a real estate business, right? Like I'm a realtor, so I'm working with clients now, and I'm looking at potentially even looking at wholesaling and getting into those types of scenarios. And flipping is another great one. But flipping, to your point, you got to find the right property with the right margins, because it can be quite expensive if you don't know what you're doing. So
yeah, it's the fuck up factor can be huge on those. Like real estate in general is very forgiving. If you are buy and hold and you bought it too expensive, as long as you can maintain the funding it, like the cash flows at least break even, or even if it's not break even and you have to funnel $100 a month in, as long as you can afford that, you'll come out the other end smelling like roses eventually. Flipping isn't as forgiving. But I also just wanted to point out, based on what you're saying about the passive and the active too, is like your relationship to the money, the active money should be designated in such a way to then create the passive income. People can't ignore that fact. You have to have, in some form, you have to have active money to be able to buy the passive asset, right?
Exactly.
So, and I mean, there's all sorts of strategies that, I mean, I'm looking into various things where if you can use your money more than once. So what I'm going to do is I have a big mortgage on my property, but it's a readvanceable mortgage for my primary residence. And the only property that I own that I don't like is my own, because I know that it's the one that costs me money. Correct. It's my anchor, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to start doing is funneling money from my projects into my mortgage, thereby opening up my credit line more for every dollar I put in. And I can pay in advance per year, like something like $75,000 a year. But then I get that money back in the form of a credit line, which then I can redeploy in investments. So the money comes in, flows through, pays down my mortgage, so my interest. I mean, your mortgage interest is like, if it's a $500,000 mortgage, it's like $500,000 in interest too, right?
Yeah.
So if you funnel it through and then redeploy it, it's now tax deductible because it's for investment purposes.
Right.
So in a sense, I'm moving that money twice, because if I spend it in cash to pay a renovator or a contractor, it's just gone forever. And my mortgage is still as high as it's ever been. Right. Well, obviously I'm paying it down. But right, so right. I'm trying to really educate myself on where best to funnel the money, and then, even take the home equity credit line that you have, open it up more and more and more, and then loan that money out as private lending at 12 or 15%. But meanwhile, a HELOC is what, it's like 2.5 or 3% right now.
Yeah.
So you could make 10% legitimately just by borrowing your HELOC money.
Yeah.
You got a HELOC for $500,000, 10% a year. I'd be happy with $5,000 a month.
That's right.
I don't live a very extravagant life. So there, I'm retired. Fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, so it's a power of leveraging money correctly. Yeah, so that's where the financial literacy needs to come in, and also a lot of folks depends on the expectations and how they want to live, right? Like you sound like you will have a very low standard of life. I wouldn't say necessarily low though, but like median. But some folks imagine, they want to be by the beachfront, have, a Mercedes, a Lamborghini, and like 5-door garages, which is great. But like, it all depends on what your expectations in life are, because a lot of us fall in that trap where we get a raise from our jobs, for instance. And what we do is we go buy a new car. We upgrade our vehicle. that's not giving me anything. Then maybe a few runs in the street when I'm smiling, but then after a while, it's a car, right?
I take my raises and I put it in my RSP.
There you go. You got to figure out something, right? Like where money makes you money. And so I love that you brought that up, that you can even leverage banks' money to give it back to someone else, then earn money on top of that to pay off your loan, which is fantastic. I think that's the end goal.
Where do the banks get the money? They just borrow it from somebody else.
Absolutely. You go try robbing a bank, there's nothing in the vault.
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny story. I bought a truck, and it was only like $5,000, and the guy wanted cash. Like, oh, can we just e-transfer it? Or okay, but he was like, he wanted cash because of the security of it. So I went to the bank, and I found out for that much money, you actually have to order it in advance.
Yeah,
they don't have that in the bank. I'm like, what? I was shocked.
Yeah, because it's just everything's just digital now, right? It's just everything just basic accounting. Andrew has this much money, Ross has this much money, so if it goes to his account, there's this. Like the physical cash doesn't exist anymore. We're in a digital era. Everything is just tap, swipe. And I wouldn't be shocked if this whole Bitcoin thing actually comes into place and takes a huge factor in the market, because who knows? I mean, I personally don't invest in it, but I can see it because it's crazy what's going on around the world now.
Yeah, I follow the Warren Buffett model, as I don't invest in something I don't understand.
Yeah, me neither. I have to educate myself first before I get into something like that.
Yeah, and you're too busy making YouTube videos, taking all your time.
That's right. Yeah, I'm too busy doing other things at this point in time. Yeah. So one more thing I wanted to ask you, Andrew, as well, is the biggest hurdle that a lot of folks have, especially when they're trying to invest, kind of distant, is the whole property management aspect of it, right? So I know you hired property managers, but like walk us through how that was. I mean, what are, I guess, some of the criteria you look for before hiring a property manager? Because there's a ton of them out there. Like, how do you screen them? Let's put it that way. Just like you screen a tenant, for instance.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I did and then what I should have done.
Beautiful.
So I had a bit of a wish list. I Googled property managers in Windsor. Pretty simple process, right? But it's funny because property managers, I don't know if this is everywhere, but they're not actually that easy to find. A lot of them don't really promote themselves. It's just strictly word of mouth. And they could be like almost like no fixed address. It's not like they have an office. Some of the bigger ones will have an office on a main street or something like that, or and a Google, like a web page. But a lot of the ones that I found by starting to ask around actually did not have. I mean, maybe they've got a Facebook page.
Right.
Like my current property manager only has a Facebook page. And they only use that because that's where they post their ads in Facebook Marketplace. But yeah, so I Googled, and I was looking for me, I wanted to be managed by somebody who implemented technology, who used technology. I'm a real systems app kind of guy to make my life simple. I want everything digital. I don't want an email with a document attached to this and that. I'd like rather have a portal that I log in that just has everything to do with my property or something. And I found a few that did that. The one I was gonna go to, which is the biggest in Windsor, and of course the biggest companies have mixed reviews. There's always people that love them and hate them. But as it turned out, the first property that I bought was a boarding house, technically speaking, by the room. And they had decided at some point in their term that they don't do boarding houses anymore because they are heavily intensive from the management perspective. So my first choice actually turned me down. So then I had to go to the second choice, and I went to Windsor and I actually spoke to a representative. Nice lady. I didn't think there was any red flags, but as it turned out, when I started to operate with them, there was a lot of staff turnover. The lady I talked to was pregnant when I talked to her, so she was actually gone like within 3 months.
Right.
And then it all just went downhill from there. So honestly, I don't know what the secret sauce is for interviewing. I find that what I've learned now is that really probably the reason that half of them didn't have websites is because word of mouth is the best way. I've had a good experience, so then I will share that experience. Like if somebody asks me who my property manager is, it's Frank from CFK Management. I love him.
Right.
Never steered me wrong. His prices are reasonable. You know, he cuts me breaks here and there. He doesn't gouge me. And that's what I look for, because a lot of the property management, you know, the price might seem low going in, but you got to look for the additionals, because there's a ton of them. You know, you do want bi-yearly inspections. Do you want like a furnace filter check? Do you want a smoke detector check? Do you want snow removal? Do you want grass cutting? Do you want leaf collection? Do you want whatever? Like there's infinite number of things that they try to tack on.
Tenant placement, tenant screening. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them do tenant, they'll do a percentage of the first month's rent or the entire first month's rent, whereas some of them just have a fixed fee.
Mm.
I prefer the fixed fee ones. So I pay a lot less because if you're just doing, you can go to any property manager for tenant screening and they're going to charge you the full pop. That seems to be universal because you're not a client of theirs, but if you are a client of theirs, you can often get a fixed fee for the screening and the placement. So I'd sort of look at it and say, like, what do you really get? And I think that property managers tend to also do a very good job of, I don't know if it's intentional, but it's hard to compare apples to apples. So you really have to look at all the different, okay, what are the additional fees? Like, what are the services that I might want? And see if you can get some sort of a list of everything that is involved. And know too, like, if you're doing a single family house, essentially there's nothing to do. You know, you might want to get in there once or twice a year under the guise of checking smoke detectors because you do have a liability there.
Right.
And then at the same time, when you're in there, you kind of just look around at stuff and make sure that it's not getting carried away. But other than that, the tenant is responsible for all the maintenance and everything. If it's a multi-situation of any kind, now you've got to look at, is there, you know, are they charging you per door? And remember that per door is the actual door of the dwelling space. So if it's by the room, then it's the bedroom door, not the front door of the house. A single family is the front door of the house. But there's going to be snow removal, and because it's a common space, like nobody in the house is responsible for any one thing. Cleaning common spaces, you know, you're going to get cleaners. So you want to like educate yourself and know what's a potential cost, and then does the property manager build that in? Is there some sort of a standard maintenance service package that they provide? But I mean, those things are good to know. A lot of that will be discovered on a phone call and you know, perhaps if they do have a website. But I find that they also won't tell you about a lot of stuff. They won't necessarily tell you the whole picture. So you really do have to educate yourself. But as far as getting a property manager, I mean, I would say word of mouth. Definitely, because nowadays, now I know. At the time, like I said, I was using Bigger Pockets was my online source in books. I didn't know any real estate investors.
Right.
So now I would say, like, oh my God, there's so many Facebook groups. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I would post in a forum and just say, you know, who do you recommend? Because no one's gonna recommend somebody that they wouldn't trust. You know, like they don't want a bad reputation for recommending a bad person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also keep in mind, at a certain point, your property manager could turn bad, and it's not necessarily for spiteful reasons or anything like that. But I've found that the trend tends to be that property managers grow beyond their capabilities. And what starts off as, I mean, it's a very easy industry from what I can understand to get into, is essentially you just need to be a person with a computer. Right? There's not a lot of limitations to entry. Like a lot of landlords can get into being a property manager as a side business, because if you have 6 or 10 properties, you have all of the infrastructure in place to manage.
Right.
So you just take on other people. But the problem is I don't know what the sweet spot is, but 50 or 100 doors beyond, now you have to upgrade those systems. Now you have to hire some office staff, somebody to answer a 24-hour emergency line, et cetera, et cetera. And it's when they don't want to spend the additional money to upgrade their infrastructure, because property management is a very low margin business.
Yeah.
So if they don't upgrade their infrastructure, then their service starts to fall, where now you start to get tenants that aren't getting somebody on the other end of the phone, or a response to an email for a leaky faucet or a light or whatever's going on, which then turns to bad, unhappy tenants, which then turns to, if they're unhappy, they don't take care of the property as well. And then, it snowballs from there. And now you've just, all of a sudden you've got bad tenants, and it's only because you didn't respond.
Yeah. So it is pretty volume based, sounds like, right? So yeah, if they're not keeping up with the volume, they're spreading themselves too thin, and they're not able to, respond and reach out. And I mean, my struggle right now, I'm self-managing. And what I noticed was, the properties that I've gone in and purchased while, going through the listing and viewings and whatnot, they're not taken care of. It's incredible. So I'm not saying necessarily it's the property manager's fault, because some of them are property managed, or it's the landlord. I'm not sure. But you walk in and it was funny. One of the properties I looked into recently, I walked in and I'm like looking up and I'm like, is there a smoke alarm or detector anywhere? And I'm with the property manager beside me, and she goes, oh yeah, I never realized that. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, so how long you been, looking after this property? Oh, 2 years. So I'm like, so in 2 years, there has been no smoke detectors in this room or this hallway? I was shocked. I could not believe my eyes.
And that's the thing. They're not going to go, quite honestly, they're not going to go above and beyond. And my property manager is, he's straightforward with me. He says, like, I'm not, like, realistically, I'm not driving by your property every day. Like, if there's a problem, we deal with it. And, maybe we do check, I don't know, periodically we do a drive-by. They're not really allowed in the house unless there's a good reason.
Right.
So unless they were, say, doing a regularly scheduled checks, and then they were checking for smoke detectors and there wasn't one there, they have known. But I think that other thing to really keep in mind too is that a lot of property managers can also get a bad name because they have bad landlords. And if I don't ask you to check the smoke detectors, and I don't ask you to get snow clearing, you're not going to do it. Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying. I wasn't sure. I'm like, definitely, I cannot put all the blame on the one individual, because me being an investor or a landlord myself, these are the things that I look for. So the communication is key, right? So you're back to your question earlier, you have a certain criteria. And I think that needs to be communicated pretty well with the property manager to see if you both align, right? So what are your expectations, and can they provide that value to you, right? And if they don't, you're dealing with the wrong person, because we want our properties run in a certain way. And if they can't provide that, then there's no point of pursuing this relationship, because it's not going to work out.
Yeah. And I think it's key too to remember that you're going to get what you pay for. I was shocked. There are some property managers that were like $250 a month for a single family house. And I was like, what? But what they were taking care of everything. The bills, like, you basically have a bank account, you put money in it, and they take care of the bills. And well, not even the rents are taking care of the bills. So they just have access to your hydro and cable and gas and all those sorts of things. And they just take care of everything. So you're going to pay for that. And, if you want that bi-yearly smoke detector check and a furnace filter check and a this check and a that check and a check, it all adds up. So I think that, you start to, as landlords, the bottom line becomes very like a primary driver. And I think that when you start looking into property management, you become very aware very quickly that I think the average, if you were to just say how much is property management, is sort of maybe like 7 to 10%.
Yeah.
And when you look at like $1,000 rent and it's $100, and you're like, holy shit, like,
yeah,
I'm only cash flowing on $1,000. You're probably only cash flowing like a couple of $100, and then 50% of that is in the property management.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna like prosper from that property because it's gonna appreciate, and the tenants are paying down the mortgage and this and that. So it's important to keep that in mind. But yeah, property management can be a very costly, and their fee 99% of the time doesn't include snow removal and grass cutting and leaf collection and that sort of stuff. So I got a quote for grass cutting. It was like $40 a week.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of money.
You want $160 a month to cut my grass. I'm like, I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Sell this house and get into the grass cutting business. Right?
That's too seasonal.
Well, it is, but I'm just thinking to myself, like, my cash flow on this house is $400.
Yeah.
You want almost half of that just to cut the lawn. Like.
Yeah. No. You definitely have to do your homework. You have to see, what's the value versus price, right? I think that's kind of like what you're trying to say. You got to very effectively determine that, figure out your criteria, and most importantly, have that 10% or 5-7%, whatever it may be, in your calculations when you are purchasing these properties. Because if I'm here in Toronto and I want to invest in Windsor, there's no way I'm checking down 4 hours to cut the grass or shovel the snow. I don't want to be getting calls in the middle of the night to say, oh, my boiler broke down, right? So absolutely, you just have to make sure that if that's your plan, again, what is it that you want, right? If you want more peace of mind, you just want your money to grow, then you got to have all the systems in place. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a big ride.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, for the 4 hours away thing, I'm almost glad that I started by investing 4 hours away, because if it was 2 blocks away, I would be checking on that house every day. I would probably go on my evening walk past that house, and then I would be seeing, oh, they didn't cut the grass, or they didn't trim that tree, or and I would drive myself crazy.
Yeah.
In all that sort of stuff, right? So, I mean, you can certainly save money if you can be a little bit more hands-on. Like locally, you might even say, like, just go cut the grass yourself.
Yeah. Often or not, I think you can make a deal with the tenants. I feel like a lot of tenants are pretty open to that. So, you cut them a little bit of a, right, you cut them a little bit off their monthly, give them $50 per month, whatever it may be, or whatever the range may be. They'll cut the grass gladly for you.
So I just want to add on to that. I've heard that tip too, and I used to pay my tenant to clean the front walk as well. But a tip that I heard was, so if you take it off their rent, then that affects the income that's coming in, right? So when you report your income, that $50 times 12 isn't on your income. But if you get them to pay their full rent and then offer them something back in like a $50 grocery gift card or something of that nature, now that can be written off as a gift or an expense of some sort. I mean, grocery is probably a bad example because you can only write off like 50% of food or something like that. But I don't know, like maybe they really like Best Buy and you'd get them a Best Buy gift card or whatever. So that's a good way to pay for the services rather than have it come directly out of the rent.
That's a good tip. Yeah, I believe you're right. I think electronics, no, not electronics. Yeah, food is a tricky one. I think you can only do 50%. But I believe if you do, like you said, a gift card, you can do Visa gift cards. I mean, it's literally cash, right? In a way, and you can write that off. I think that's probably the best option you could do. So that's a very good tip. Yeah. I'm going to actually, I totally forgot about that. I should be implementing that myself.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. I got a golden nugget too today.
There you go. Well, I think these podcasts are great because like I'm actually going to start one myself in the new year, and I look at it like it's an entirely selfish thing because I get to talk to a whole bunch of people and pick their brains.
That's right.
So
That's
it's like
right.
a learning experience for me, right?
Yeah, and it's networking, right? I mean, the way I came across this whole was the two things. I'm like, listen, I want to give back to the community. Secondly, this way I'm forced to network, right? We've been trying to connect for how long? It's been quite a long time, right? And then we finally made it happen, right? Because there's at least some incentive for you because now you're going to be, featured and people are going to hear your story and they're going to connect with you. So it's a win-win for everybody, right? So that's what I love about podcasting and other sorts of networking, because unfortunately we don't have, the ability to visit each other anymore, and because of the whole COVID or meet up somewhere. So you got to be a little bit creative. And I think, this makes it even quite easier because you're sitting at your house and I'm sitting at my house, right? At like 9:30.
Yeah. Both comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you some few more questions. We're going to go towards the end of our podcast here. So what I usually like to do towards the end of the segment is just ask more specific questions about kind of learn about yourself. So I know we touched upon Rich Dad Poor Dad already. So besides Rich Dad Poor Dad, what two other books would you recommend somebody looking into starting real estate?
Oh boy.
I see you got quite a bit of a collection over there.
Well, one of the current ones that I've just finished for the second time actually is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Yeah,
that was really good. A lot of like just doing small things every day towards a bigger goal, and don't get overwhelmed. That's more of a mindset book, but I think that really, especially because real estate is entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And you have to do a lot of stuff. And, when you're starting out, you can't necessarily outsource everything that you want to. And so just sort of breaking it down into chunks and not getting overwhelmed. The first 6 months, I was like, well, I figured some stuff out. But yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad was also kind of a mindset in that it gets you thinking about how to properly use money. It's not even really, a real estate book, sort of by definition. Another book it comes to mind is, I think it's by Scott Trench of Bigger Pockets Publishing, and it's called Set for Life. And that book always really stuck with me. Again, it's a bit of a mindset book, unfortunately, but it has some big ideas on things like how to treat your money and how to think about money. Like one of the bigger takeaways from that is, don't sacrifice your cup of coffee or some small pleasures in life. The biggest expenses we have in life are our vehicle and the costs associated around that, our living expenses.
Right.
And so it kind of promoted like a higher level thinking to me, which was, if you work close to home, you don't need the vehicle. And better yet, if my home is my office, it's double purpose. Or do you, it's sort of like what you're realizing too, or your demographic of people who live in condos is realizing this is costing me a lot and there's no real reason for me to be here.
Right.
So it's that making that big shift in your mindset. It's like, where's your money really going?
Right.
It's not going to Starbucks, even though it seems expensive.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a financial literacy book. And I think that those are expensive or are important, because a real estate book, I could mention literally any real estate book.
Mm-hmm.
And real estate is real estate.
Yeah. I think
every book says the same thing because it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Like when you get really granular is when you're experienced. And now you're dealing with the nuances. But out of the gate, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, real estate is like 5 strategies with like 5 dwelling types that are interlaced in different ways, and that's basically it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, we tend to forget that our biggest expense is really our cost of living, right? Like people will spend 50 to almost 60%, especially with the way things are going now in the market, on just living and just to have a roof over your head. So if you can figure out a way to cut that, that's just another 20-30% in your pocket per month just off that.
House hacking is probably the most brilliant thing that I've ever come across, and I wish that I had started that way.
Yeah, that's for sure. For anybody starting, try to live at home as long as possible. A, B, save your money, and then house hack. Get a a rental unit where you can live in one and then rent the other. So you have, again, some sort of income coming in, or at least paying half of your expenses for you per month. So huge tip there for sure.
And there's a certain amount of, if I can just add,
sure,
the idea of a bit of sacrifice. So like I said, I have a small house. I think my whole house is probably 600 square feet. It's like pretty incredible. But I do have a basement, and I actually built a wall in my hallway kind of comes into the living room, and then it goes like there's another stairs down to the basement. I actually built a little privacy wall in my living room to encapsulate that so that I could turn my basement into a suite so that the tenant could kind of come and go without bothering me, because they had to come through the house. And so I chopped up like 200 square feet of my house out of 600 to have a tenant in the basement, because it was like that started to pay for my house.
There you go.
It paid a third of my mortgage. Mm-hmm. My neighbor next door, they've got their house divided so many ways I can't even tell you. They have 2 sisters in the back. They have her sister in the basement, and then they live in the other side of the basement or something like that. And it's just like, Toronto's expensive, and if you want to live here, you can have the luxury of owning the whole space in your house. You need 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 square feet. But like, unless you're making a ton of coin and that doesn't even affect you, maybe you need to make some sacrifices about, chopping up your living space. And I'm hearing for the last several years that 2 families buying a house together is not unheard of these days.
Yeah. I know you have to, because of the way how prices have gone up and qualifications have changed too, right? So that's absolutely true, and it makes sense, right? Like you're going in there because, especially even if you even look at pre-construction, like you're expected to pay about at least 10%, and we're talking about homes that are 600,000. Actually, no, 15% isn't the norm, not even 10. And then the way they structure it is like, say 30,000 on signing, and then 30 in 30 days, and then 20. And so like, that's a lot of cash to just have sitting, at home. So a lot of folks don't have that. So going in with a partner makes absolute sense. And what about traveling? Are you into big traveling? So if you were to go anywhere, where would it be?
That's a bad question to ask right now. No, I'm not doing any traveling.
Well, if you could.
If I could. I'm not really a big traveler. To be honest with you, I'm too lazy to make the arrangements. If somebody else says, here's a trip, you just have to pay me $1,200 and we're going on Tuesday, then I'd be perfectly willing to do it. Most of my traveling has been Caribbean, and I think that's just sort of common for most people to get away in the winter months. But I did like Europe. I like Europe for the architecture and the history. And
Where exactly Europe?
Well, let's say England mostly, because I had some family and friends over there.
Right.
But it's just to think, Canada's 200 years old or whatever.
We're a baby.
And like the building. So I've got ancestral heritage in Edinburgh, and we went there, and it was like Edinburgh Castle, and it was like, I don't know, 1,000 years old or whatever it is. And just like, this is incredible,
Yeah.
But so I don't have any specific place, but I have decided that I want to be in winter. I want to be somewhere where it is warm.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be sunny in a beach. Could be. I got family in Victoria. So you know what? Maybe I'll head over there for the winters, and I'll be what do you call it? A snowbird at 40, because I just like the cold doesn't bother me, but the limitations. Like I usually go for a walk, and like I said, and I have to walk on the streets because the sidewalks are too slippery.
Right.
I can't do that during the day because obviously there's cars. So at night I go and walk right down the middle of the street kind of thing. So if I had to travel, it would be somewhere that is consistently warm or had a lot of history.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I'm the same way. That would be I prefer warm temperatures. So that's the long-term goal. I want to be able to live 6 months out of a year somewhere nice and warm.
Although I have heard great things about Iceland.
I heard it's really beautiful. A couple of friends went there. The hot springs are apparently unbelievable. So I went to one, so I would love to explore that. That'd be amazing.
I might give that a try.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then Andrew, if there was one piece of advice you can give to somebody looking to start in real estate investing, what would it be? From what you know now, we kind of touched up on it earlier, but if you could pick one thing, what would that be?
That's a tough one. I'm going to be remembered forever. This is going to be in the history books. I have to answer this right.
It's called archives.
I mean, I think that the real key is to act. I mean, that sounds like such a cliche, but I spent a year reading, like I said, 100 books and this and that. And at some point you start to realize all the real estate books do say the same thing. All the podcasts, more or less, there's a common thread. It's oh, I need to learn more and more. Mm-hmm. You can buy as many books as you want. You're not going to learn more after you've read about half a dozen or a dozen. Read 6 mindset books that are like bestsellers, and read 6 bestseller real estate book, and then just like get going. Because that's all you really need. And then work on it obviously throughout time. But the one thing that I didn't take advantage of, and maybe this is the bigger, look through the Facebook groups. It's so prevalent right now to be part of a community. And I think that when I was starting out, I felt very much alone, and I didn't have people to ask questions for. So I'm going to change it. So you got to act. That's you have to do that, obviously.
Yep.
But reach out in the community, get into pay for memberships to these groups if you have to. A couple of $100 in the grand scheme seemed like a lot of money, or $50 a month or whatever, seemed like a lot to me back then. Now it's just like I have the mindset of I'm going to recoup that money 100-fold.
Right.
So just do it. And I mean, there's you could dip your toes with some free Facebook groups, and then move on to the pay ones. And when you get a bit more comfortable, I actually wouldn't even be afraid to pay bigger amounts of money. You really do. I mean, I used to think it was all bullshit and marketing ploys in the beginning, but I mean, I pay tens of thousands of dollars for coaching, and it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. So get around the right people, get in a community, and you'll feel a lot better. And like, if you're on Facebook, you can reach out to me and be like, oh, Andrew, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Or like, how do I buy this house or whatever? And somebody will answer your question.
Yeah, that's what we're waiting for.
There's also a very big difference between the books you're going to read. They're going to teach you the fundamentals, but the books can't guide you through your emotional side that you're scared of buying your first house, or the books can't not navigate a specific problem that you're having because your finances and your taxation and your personal situation are different. The books are speaking in generalities, right? So once you get that base knowledge that this is what a BRRRR is, this is what a buy and hold means, this is like, learn the terms and the jargons and all that sort of stuff, then you need to have people around you that can support you and answer specific questions. And the referrals, right? So like I said about property managers and stuff like that, how much easier would my life have been if I had more people to refer? So that's what I do now. Like, I start seeing somebody's talking about contractors and I start seeing the same name over and over. People, I know who my next property manager is going to be if my guy packs it up or shits the bed or whatever. I know who it's going to be because I've seen the same name over and over and over in the groups.
Right, exactly.
I don't need it today, but I know who I'll need in 5 years or whatever.
Awesome. And then the last question, I mean, what are some of the failures you've experienced? I mean, we always talk about success, but we never talk about failures.
This is a whole nother like podcast.
You could do a quick one. Doesn't have to be many. Just this one that you can think of. Yeah.
I feel like I've over renovated. I look at some of my properties and I wonder if I could have chosen cheaper materials, or if I didn't, like what value did I really get out of this or that? And I think that's a bit of a learning experience. Like there's a sliding scale of like, obviously you're not going to put a marble countertop in $1,000 a month apartment in Windsor. That's fairly obvious, but then there's other little things, you know, like that light fixture doesn't have to be fancy, or that, you know, don't buy expensive taps, or I don't know, like just overall, you can get carried away in a rental property if you start thinking it like it's kind of like your house, or you want it to be proper. You know, like you mentioned earlier about that perfectionist attitude or mentality. Like I have that too, and it, you know, that's actually one of the things that I'm trying to pound out of myself. Because it prevents me from just moving forward, and I get lost in the weeds a lot and stuff like that. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
But so when I'm in a property, there's a certain amount of me that just says, well, that has to be done because that's the proper way.
Right.
And from a monetary sense, you need to sort of curb that and say, you know, okay, this is a rental apartment, there's going to get damaged. You need to maybe, I don't know. There's if you start looking at rental properties, you're going to see some really messed up shit.
Yeah.
And people were okay with that.
Yeah.
Even in a half decent neighborhood, like I worry about the aesthetics of like how even the door frame is to the ceiling or this or that. And it's like, well, someone's going to have a real problem with that. You know, like, no, they're not. Only you are.
Yeah, no, you definitely I'd point out something very important, which is strategic renovations, right? So you got to look at your return on that investment. So, you know, putting in laundry, for example, in my opinion, is very important, because that would attract better tenant for you, and you can charge up a little bit more, right? Because people see the value in that, right? Yeah. Versus, like you said, if I want to pick this specific countertop that's gold or is white, nobody gives a crap about that. Like they just want something that they can cut their vegetables on, use, you know, and away they go, right? As long as it's not run down. You know, of course, you got to make it look nice. I think that needs to be appealing, but you got to be careful where you spend your money.
But I mean, when you're spending, you know, 20 grand, 25 grand, it's very easy to get into that. Oh, it's just $50 more. Oh, it's just 100. And your renovation can get sort of a creep to it that, you know, I did a renovation early on this year that was like $75,000 or something like that. And like the whole house was, at the end, I mean, I lifted the appraised value over $100,000.
Right.
But it wasn't enough. It wasn't a great BRRRR. Like I had to leave about 40 grand in that house, and I was very unhappy with myself.
Right. So to eliminate that, do you have like a certain, like, you know, list of materials and stuff that you stick by? I know, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of investors kind of tend to do that. They have like a list, and they basically make every single house look almost the same, because they know how much the material costs. They know how much the labor will be, for instance, right? So they have a good idea for their budgets.
Yeah. No, I mean, I tend to make my budgets fairly loosely in the beginning. Because I just look at something, and I'm like, okay, the bathroom's going to be $4,500, and the kitchen's going to be $6,500, and the floors are going to be, you know, $3 a square foot plus whatever. And so I do like rough math like that. And then when it starts to really, you know, you're getting the quotes in, and then you have to start to pick and choose what you do and don't do. But overall, I mean, yeah, like the materials, I tend to use more or less the same thing, or the same caliber, you know. So sometimes, you know, for example, Home Depot might not have that tap, but you're still going to get like, you're not going to go from a $65 tap to $165 tap. It's still going to be like 69,
Right.
you know, or $70 range kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, that's always good to keep. I mean, the first thing that I realized, and like I haven't done a ton of renovations this year. Like I really kind of take this year as a reset. Like even though I have 6 properties, I didn't renovate 2 of them, and 2 of them I had from 2 years ago. So I don't really count that. So really, it's like 2 properties that I like put my systems in place on. And I realized very quickly that yeah, just use the same materials. If I have a couple houses, like I have a house on the go, and then like I know that my closing for the next house is like a couple of months away, and there's a sale on, like I'll buy like 5,000 square feet of flooring at one time, to enough to accommodate both houses type of thing, to save on, you know, the materials there. And just, it's easier for your contractors if you just say, this is a chrome plated single pole tap bathroom fixtures, and just even like use the same one. Like if you can get, I'm going into the weeds a bit here, I apologize.
No worries.
But sometimes there's a situation where the tap comes straight out, and then sometimes you might have the sideways sink or whatever. So it's like I come to the conclusion even that the tap that I would have put on a front facing might be different than the tap that I would put on a side facing. But why don't I just get the tap for the side facing and use that for everything?
Right.
Because the one tap won't do both purposes, but the other tap will do both purposes, right? So it's like really simplify the way that you're doing things. Do your vanities, you know, you can buy an out of the box vanity, just pop that in every home. There are going to have to be adaptations. You know, like a powder room vanity doesn't serve for a full-sized bathroom vanity. Like obviously it's going to be too small, so you may have to have some variations, but generally, yeah, having like a materials list. The only problem with materials lists I'm kind of frustrated by is that I've got this really extensive chart that has literally a little pick, and it has a SKU, it has the price, the description, you know, it has like everything basically like the website.
Right.
And I made that so that I could actually help in the process where the contractor wouldn't have to waste time going shopping. So if I email them this list, they just put a number next to the quantity of what they need. And then I order it online, and they just need to pick it up a week later or whatever, a couple days later. So what I was finding was that I place an order for 25 or 30 items. And then when the contractor goes, like what I didn't notice is like when they go to pick it, so I place the order and I don't really pay any attention anymore until I get the email that says come and pick it up.
Right.
But what I didn't realize is when they go to pick the order, they just don't have it sometimes. So then the contractor goes to pick up the skid of stuff, and they get it, and they're like, well, out of 50 items, there's only like 35 here. So then it's like, oh, fuck, now what, you know? So I don't think there's a perfect solution.
No.
I think you just kind of do the best you can.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be good if you can, again, if you have this certain criteria, or this list would be is like you buy bulk and you store it in your warehouse, right? And then you just deploy as you need. But that would be something that, you know, you need to get to a certain amount of X amount of dollars in business in order to have that.
Hell of a lot. Yeah, because then you have to also then offset the cost of storing it as
exactly. Yeah, you essentially have overhead costs now where you didn't have before. So there's definitely pros and cons, but yeah, if you get to that level and that volume, in that case, it actually makes sense, right? You save a lot of time shopping around.
I've actually heard of a company in the States that does so many flips that they actually, I think either they bought out or started a kitchen cabinet company.
Wow.
Because they were doing so many cabinets that they just manufacture them themselves now. I was like, holy shit, that's crazy.
Spin-off businesses. It happens, right? You figure something out that others see value. Why not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. This has been amazing. I know you gave us so much information, and like I love it. Like there was so much golden nuggets here for us to learn and to deploy in our business. So
fun. Thanks for having me.
I had a great time. Yeah, no, you're awesome. So I hope everybody watching got great value out of this. And if for folks that want to connect with you, Andrew, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Andrew Cox REI everywhere. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you can find me anywhere with that.
Perfect. And I'll have Andrew's information in the show notes. So anybody looking to reach out to Andrew, please do so. A great contact to have. He's absolutely amazing. So he'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So definitely connect with him.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you were able to get some great golden nuggets out of it. The kindest thing that you could do is share this podcast across all social media to help as many people as possible. If you like this podcast or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or YouTube. I'll post the links in the show notes for those accounts so you can find me. I love bouncing ideas off people, and I love talking real estate. Thanks. I'll see you in the next episode. Remember, financial freedom is just a couple properties away.